This was contained in a press statement signed by the State Commissioner for Information, John Okiyi Kalu, and issued to journalists in Umuahia yesterday. The statement said the first phase will include distribution of cash, protective materials, and food items. The items are to be delivered to churches and mosques in the state through their representatives, according to the schedule adopted by the COVID-19 committee. The Abia government has further restated its determination and focus in ensuring the safety of lives of the people over the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, which had led to the economic and social lockdown. In the meantime, the ruling All Progressives Congress (APC) has appealed to Nigerians to support moves by the federal government to seek medical support from China in a bid to fight the scourge of the global coronavirus pandemic in the country, saying the action was in the interest of the country. The National Publicity Secretary of the party, Malam Lanre Isau Nilu, yesterday made the appeal in an interview with journalists in Abuja. Last Friday, the Minister of Health, Dr. Ozage Ehanire, disclosed government's plan to invite a team of Chinese medical experts to combat COVID-19 outbreak in the country. On Monday, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, also reaffirmed this decision. But in a swift reaction, the Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ, the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, and some concerned Nigerians vehemently kicked against federal government's decision to invite the Chinese medical experts to the country, arguing that the action will not only be counterproductive, it will also undermine the success so far recorded by Nigerian medical personnel, and they expressed fears that Nigerians may be turned to experimental guinea pigs by the Chinese. The ruling party, through its spokesman, however, appealed to all Nigerians to rally round the government in this new drive to defeat the dreaded virus, maintaining that the pandemic requires international collaboration and support of all global citizens, stressing that the scourge was not limited to the country alone. You are listening to Teamset Morning News, coming to you from Teamset 94.1 FM, transmitting from Ile-Ajun, Oke-Agboja, Ijebu-Jesha, in the state of Osun, Nigeria. You're welcome back. To the rest of the news, the World Health Organization (WHO) chief Tedros Ghebreyesus has dismissed as racist a suggestion by some scientists that the coronavirus vaccine be tested in Africa. Ghebreyesus, at a press briefing, said Africa is not a testing ground for any vaccine and described such suggestions as a hangover from the colonial mentality. Comments by two French doctors sparked a comeback after a television debate in which they suggested trials of vaccine in Africa to see if a tuberculosis vaccine would prove effective against coronavirus. Their statement sparked backlash on social media, with celebrities including top footballers Didier Drogba and Samuel Eto'o describing it as unbelievably shocking and provocative. Meanwhile, Apostle Johnson Suleiman of Omega Fire Ministries has said that Africa is not a testing ground for coronavirus vaccine. Suleiman wondered why the COVID-19 vaccine should be tested in Africa when the United States and Europe have recorded more deaths. In a tweet, the clergyman said the vaccine should be tested in Europe, which has recorded more deaths than Africa. It will be recalled that Jean-Paul Mira and his colleague Camille Locht had recently suggested that Africa was the best place to conduct the COVID-19 test. They made the claims while recalling how an experimental treatment for AIDS was carried out in Africa. This suggestion has since triggered global outrage, as some described it as racist. Meanwhile, scientists in Australia have discovered an already existing drug, ivermectin, which they claim kills COVID-19 within 48 hours in the laboratory. Oluwabamishetemi Prayer Church, Ilesha, Osun State, has declared one-day fasting and prayers for God's intervention to end the rampaging coronavirus disease. The church, in a statement by its minister in charge, Deacon Akmojulusun Abiodun, yesterday said that the 24 hours fasting and prayers would hold today from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Deacon Abiodun said the fasting and prayer, which is tagged Lord Heal Our Land, would be observed at family levels. The minister in charge enjoins all and sundry to use this period to pray fervently for the country in their homes. He therefore advised people to adhere strictly to government directives at federal and state levels and to stick to hygiene practices and the social distancing. Report says some designated markets in Rivers State yesterday opened for residents to buy and sell ahead of the Easter weekend. The state government had earlier ordered the closure of markets across the state in a bid to curtail the spread of coronavirus COVID-19. However, Governor Nyesom Wike last week directed that some markets be reopened for business yesterday and today between 7 a.m. and 12 noon. Journalists reported that there was a huge turnout as residents shopped ahead of the Easter celebration. However, the governor's directive did not include the reopening of some major bigger markets like the oil mill and slaughter, Trans Amadi markets in Obio Okpo local government area, and Ibi Ama market in Ahoada West local government area. Away from coronavirus story, Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State has relieved the Vice Chancellor of the Kogi State University, Ayangba, Professor Mohammed Abdul Kadri, of his appointment. A statement by the Secretary to the State Government, Dr. Folashade Ayoade, in Lokoja yesterday also announced the removal of Professor Mohammed Aturita as the rector of the Kogi State Polytechnic, Lokoja. Both Abdulkadri and Aturita had earlier in February been placed on indefinite suspension for ignoring the governor's directive on single treasury account (TSA). It further said that the governor had approved the appointment of Professor Marietu Tenuche as the acting vice chancellor of the university, while Dr. Salisu Usman would act as the rector of the Polytechnic. Tenuche was a former deputy vice chancellor of the institution, while Abdulkadri has barely 5 months to complete his tenure as vice chancellor of the university. The statement said that the appointments took immediate effect, while handing and taking over should also be completed immediately. Tragedy struck in the early hours of yesterday in the Angwa-Tiv area of the Kogi state capital, Lokoja, when a 23-year-old, simply identified as Bayo, committed suicide. Bayo, according to a source who resides on an adjacent street, was sighted in the area the previous day going about his usual activities. The deceased, it was gathered, was engaged in managing a thrift business, which a source said could be responsible for his death. The source, who pleaded anonymity, told journalists that Bayo took his own life by drinking poison. The deceased, who hailed from Ogori in the Ogori-Mongogo area of Kogi Central, was said to have graduated from the Kogi State Polytechnic about 2 years ago. He was said to have started the thrift business after failed efforts to secure paid employment. Another source described his death as not ordinary, adding that the deceased was too gentle to have done anything untoward. Before I go, here again are the highlights. World Bank releases $82 million to Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari approves suspension of interest on debts owed by state governments. Osun State Government today commences distribution of relief materials. WHO rejects using Africa as testing ground for coronavirus vaccine. 23-year-old man commits suicide in Kogi State. That ends Teamset Morning News, read by Olamide Owolabi and packaged by Afolabi Koka. Thanks for listening. Good morning.
Are you ready?
Question, tell me what you think about me.
All day long.
Throw your hands in the air if you's a true player.
In the mix.
This is a request, Mr. Radio Man.
94.1 Teamset FM.
Hey.